There is an old myth that the Philippine Islands were formed by a battle between sky and sea. Grown tired from flying without a place to rest, a bird told the sky that the sea wished to rise and engulf it with its waves. In response, the sky threatened to cast rocks and islands upon the waters. The epic battle took place, and the rushing waves and hurling rock created an archipelago, whereupon the bird alighted gently on a piece of earth. This mystical story shows the beauty of the Philippines that is seen in its natural formation and in its people, who have a sense of serenity much like the resting bird. Located in Southeast Asia, the Philippines are just slightly larger than the state of Arizona. However, it's home to about 16 times more people than its U.S. counterpart. The people of this exotic archipelago live within the 7,107 islands, of which 11 of the largest islands cover 90% of the land. The islands are divided into three main groups. Luzon is the major island to the north and home of the capital Manila. The Visayas is a cluster of islands in the middle of the archipelago. And to the south lies Mindanao. Being just north of the equator gives the Philippines a tropical climate which provides a perfect setting for a variety of activities. Relax at one of the many beaches, hot springs, and waterfalls. Enjoy ideal locations for scuba diving, a variety of surfing spots, sailing, peaceful hike in the mountainous terrain, or rowing through underground caverns. The temperature is relatively constant from north to south throughout the year. The Philippines has two main weather seasons, rainy and dry. The dry season usually begins in December and ends in May, the first 3 months being the coolest and the second 3 the hottest. Thus, the most pleasant weather is usually from November through February. Given the geographic, geological, and tectonic settings of the Philippine archipelago, the Philippines is prone to earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and typhoons. The converging Eurasian and Pacific plates are constantly squeezing and crunching the Philippines, changing its features and affecting its history. One of the most memorable eruptions took place in 1991, when a long dormant volcano named Mount Pinatubo spewed some 5 billion cubic meters of pyroclastic flow materials. Because of the immense volume of debris, the rivers spilled over and even changed courses, wiping villages off the map. Floodwaters inundated large areas, turning them into economic wastelands overnight. The eruption also triggered the displacement and eventual evacuation of employees at the two U.S. military bases, the Clark Air Base and the Subic Naval Station. Pinatubo has come to be synonymous with the erratic climate changes worldwide that proceeded from Pinatubo's effect on the atmosphere. Numerous other unique geological formations dot the islands. Taal Lake, the most unique of the world's large lakes, is actually a lake in an island in a lake in an island in the sea. Past eruptions since 1572 left Taal Lake without said to be a former crater, a dramatic tableau. Mayon volcano has a near-perfect cone maintained by eruptions that occur only in the same place, and a style of eruption that's not too explosive. The famous Chocolate Hills provides a striking panorama of more than 1,000 dome-shaped hills rising out of the ground. Standing shoulder to shoulder, one behind another, might seem more the endeavor of human hands than of nature. These limestone formations are thought to be formed some 2 million years ago when the area laid underwater. As the movements of waves and currents carried particles of coral, shell, and silt towards the shore, fine layers formed upon layers, creating mounds and formations. Over a very long time, These formations eventually rose above the water, while constant rainfall and currents sculpted ridges and channels throughout to define the hills as they now exist.
Then there is what is referred to as the eighth wonder of the world, the Banawe rice terraces, carved into the hills using primitive tools and bare hands. The Ifugao tribespeople constructed the terraces for the sole purpose of feeding their people. More than 2,000 years later, the architectural design remains breathtaking.
The Filipino people have indefatigable optimism in the face of political upheavals. The Philippines has seen several years of dictatorship and corrupt governments. The most memorable administration known for these characteristics was that of Ferdinand Marcos, who stayed in power from 1965 to 1986. With outside pressures threatening to overthrow the government, such as the rise of the Communist Party of the Philippines and the Moro National Liberation Front separatist group, President Ferdinand Marcos abolished Congress and imposed martial law on the country. His dictatorship lasted nearly 21 years. The impact that the administration made on Filipinos showed the true heart of democracy that continues to expand today. A key event that led to the ousting of Marcos was the assassination of Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr., a senator who was exiled from the Philippines for his outspoken beliefs on conflicting ideas and his popularity amongst the masses. Ninoy had always been an advocate for a peaceful resolution to the ongoing political concerns within his country. In a speech given in 1981, he spoke of his intentions.
Mr. Marcos, fear the trial of your people. You have been in office for 16 years. We do not want your blood. We do not want revenge. We do not want to hurt your family. We only ask that freedom be returned.
In 1983, Ninoy returned to the Philippines and was mysteriously shot in the airport tarmac, initiating a string of riots and protests around the country. Widow Cory Aquino continued her belated husband's mission by running for the presidency in the next election, but lost in a fraudulent election. The people were outraged, and Cory Aquino urged for a nonviolent protest. On February 22, 1986, Marcos's own defense minister and vice chief of staff refused to comply with the president and locked themselves inside the defense ministry headquarters in Manila. When Marcos sent troops to oust his old comrades, tanks found themselves face to face with hundreds of thousands of Filipinos who gathered outside armed with nothing but rosaries, flowers, and a united voice of the people. They sang and danced along Epifanio de los Santos Avenue for 4 days until Marcos surrendered and left the country. The EDSA People Power Revolution is the first bloodless revolt and set precedents for the region and the world. Ninoy would have been proud to see that his unyielding efforts had paid off. In the speech that was left unread, he quoted Gandhi by saying,
"The willing sacrifice of the innocent is the most powerful answer to insolent tyranny that has yet been conceived by God and man."
Tutuklasan ng mga kasila ang ating samahan. Bakit hindi natin sila magpagsikan? Ngunit Supremo, hindi ba't masyadong maaga para simulan ng ibagsikan? Kung hindi ngayon, kailan pa? Wala na tayong magpipilian? Tama. Tama yun. Kung gayon, ang nating sumasang-ayon at ang tamang paglaban hanggang sa huli. Ibagsin niyo ang inyong mga sedula at sabay-sabay natin ulitin. Doon nagsisilbing ugnayan natin sa mga Kastila. Dapat na nating tapusin ang sabritang pagbabayad ng buwis. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas! Mabuhay! Mabuhay ang Supremo! Mabuhay!
Narito ang resulta ng halalan. Si Emilio Ginaldo bilang ating Pangulo. Mariano Trias bilang pangalawang Pangulo. Artemio Ricarte bilang Kapitan General. Emiliano Riego de Dios bilang Direktor ng Digmaan. At Andres Bonifacio bilang Direktor ng Suliraning Panloob.
Sino tutulong sa resulta ng halalan? Hindi ito tama! Ako si siyang direktor ng Suliraning Panloob. Kaya hindi lang namin bigay. Sa isang tao wala kang natin pinagirahanan. Meron ako na pinabigay. Sa isang na kanino ang pagkaso. Sino mga doon sa tayo? Huwag ito yung mga sinungan! Halika pa natin tuwan! Halika pa natin ang resulta ng halalan! Hindi ko mapamilya mga ganyan ng tawag sa akin mga natin! Kung gano'n, bilang Pangulo at Supremo ng Kalipunan, bilang ko kalapita ko at resulta ng halalan! General! General!
Magandang araw, General. Magandang araw.
Magandang umaga mga kasal. Magandang umaga na Romeo. Mga kasama, atin na nakamit ang kalayang ating mga. Bakit hindi pa natin pa ngayon ang kalayang ating mga? Bakit na Romeo?
Hindi ba mas makabubuti kung magkatagmo tayo ng ating pakalaan? Supunod sa gayon, kailangan ng Pilipinas na lupong bansa at tayo ng nakakala at nakarilin. Nagpuntong yung mga sinura natin. Ibali, sa oras na ipahayag natin ang ating pagsasalita, ay magiging matuslog ang mga Pilipinas sa paglaban sa kanila. At ang isa pa, ay mas mapapabilis ang pagkilala ng ibang bansa sa Pilipinas bilang bayang nagsasalita. Nasakayan kami ni Remiyong. Marapat lamang po sigilan natin ito lalo na din sa Luzon. Kung gayon, sa ika-12 ng Hunyo at sa lukuyang taon, ay ating papahayag ang ating kasalila mula sa pamahalaan. At makabubuti ko ating ito ipalathala sa malimbata o maraming Pilipino ang makasaksi ng magandang pangyayari sa ating bayan. Matungan sa Pilipinas. At ang isa pa, siguro mas makabubuti magkaroon ng tayo ng tulong. Maraming kalayaan sa mga akilan. Kung ang lahat ay nasakalan, kahit pa ang Pilipinas, ang bandi ng aming ginamit na nakaraang biglaan. Masakal ka na, General. General, yun po ba yung bandi na inyong ginamit? Sa ika-28 ng Mayo, kung saan kayo ang nanalo laban sa mga kansila? Tama ka. Kayo ang napamayos masaayon. Aking na rin sa pagkasin natin po niya kilusin upang niwanang komposisyon para sa naturang araw. Bueno, makakalis na kayo at inyo nang ipahayag sa lahat ang magandang balita ito.
Driving inland near Subic Bay, one arm of MacArthur's three-pronged attack captures Olongapo Naval Station on the way to Manila. This same thrust, which later joined with the forces pouring south from Lingayen Bay, also takes an airfield, which, prior to the approach of the ground forces, had been heavily strafed by our bombers. Many Jap planes have been caught on the ground and will never fly again. The fleeing enemy used bombs to mine the field, but the Dragon's teeth are pulled, and entrenched Japs ahead are pounded by our heavy howitzers. The enemy puts up little resistance until our troops reach the outskirts of the capital, where their rear guard elements put up a strong delaying action. The third spearhead closing the trap on the Manila Japs is led by Lieutenant General Robert Eichelberger. The American forces, whose strength has been increased by bands of patriotic Filipino guerrillas, moves on Manila with all the irresistible force of a tidal wave. Luzon's native tribesmen, the Negritos, add their forces to the liberation of their homeland. The main attack rolls down from the north, and as our victorious forces reach the suburbs of Manila, the net closes on Japanese collaborators. These are official Signal Corps pictures. There's a little extra welcome in this particular town. Seems our guns and bombs clean missed the local brewery. Nearing the city, swollen to 1 million wartime population, stark proof of the Jap occupation is encountered. And as Manila Station is reached, evidence of Jap demolition is met. Knowing they couldn't hold the capital, they destroyed all they could with gasoline and dynamite. Loyal guerrillas point out Jap snipers. A Yank sharpshooter gives them a dose of their own medicine. 3 years of relentless effort is rewarded. 5-star General Douglas MacArthur sets his people free. Here in Bilibid prison, 1,100 people suffered all the vicious brutality of a remorseless enemy. Faced with a diet of potato peelings and the flesh of dogs and cats when they could get it, deliberately starved and ravaged by disease, the released captives find strength and courage to greet their liberator. Toughest of the barriers encountered by our forces was the Pasig River. An armored Jap boat is sunk. Our troops cross to the south bank, under fire. The wounded are rushed to hospital. The Japs, entrenched in Southside Manila, fought stubbornly for many days, using every trick they knew, burning and wrecking as they withdrew, and sheltering behind the civilian population. They staved off defeat as long as possible. Manila is a shambles, and the natives are driven from their homes by the savage battle. For years they had to bow to their hated invaders, salute them, obey their curfew, and display their flag. But now, with a little more effort, they will be free of the yoke. Nearing Intramuros, the old walled city built by the Spanish, the fighting grows in intensity. Some of the natives are caught in the murderous crossfire. The Japs blew up water mains and pumping stations, and Manila's fire equipment was completely useless. In North Manila alone, one whole section of 20 blocks was fire swept. Our forces fought fire with dynamite, blasting fire breaks to halt consuming flames. Through the gutted city, the battle continues. There's only one way to stop the destruction: drive the Jap out completely. While in control, the Japs methodically stripped the Filipinos of their possessions, but they saved some things. As the Yanks advanced, the citizens returned to their former neighborhoods. Thousands died because the Japs would not release them, and because collaborationists betrayed them. Agents of the enemy who helped open the doors to the Jap invaders. Many Filipinos gave their lives as part of the price of victory. But Manila's dead are revenged. The 6 weeks campaign cost the Japs 100,000 men and opened Manila Bay to our ships. The enemy's lifeline through the China Sea is at the mercy of our planes and battle wagons. The recapture of Manila sets the stage for the big show, the drive on the Japanese homeland. And Manila itself will arise again from its ashes.
Long before the Philippines were invaded by the foreigners, our ancestors had already established their government. They called their government the barangay government. The term barangay came from the word balangay, or a boat. The first communities were called barangays. These barangays were small, self-sufficient, and self-supporting communities. Each barangay was composed of 30 to 100 families and ruled by a leader called datu. The leader of the barangay, or the datu, had power over the people within his control. The datu exercised both political and religious powers. Just like other leaders, the datu has his duty. He was the lawmaker, religious leader, administrator. He maintains peace and order in his community, defends his people from enemies and invaders, gives advice to those who come to him, rules with justice and in accordance with their traditions and beliefs, protects the welfare of his constituents, helps the sick and the needy. Upon the death of the datu, his eldest son or daughter inherited his position. When the datu had no child, the people in the barangay chose their own new datu. The datu wasn't alone in governing the barangay. He was assisted by his chief advisors, or what they call atubang sa datu. During this time, there were three social classes in the barangay. These were the datu, the timawa, and the alipin. The datu class was the highest class in the society. Those who belonged to this class were wealthy, powerful, and respected by the whole barangay. Below the datu class was the timawa class, which was composed of the common people, while the lowest level was the alipin class. Alipin originally meant alaga or ward. However, as time passed, alipin became synonymous to slave. The Tagalogs had two kinds of alipin, the alipin na mamahay and the alipin sa gilid. Every member of the barangay had his rights and corresponding duties, which were in accordance with their beliefs and traditions. Just like any other government, the barangay government had laws. They were mostly oral, handed down from one generation to another. Our ancestors made a lot of laws, but only a few were preserved. Examples of laws then are the Code of Maguindanao and the Code of Dili. There were also public trials back then. The datu was served as the judge. He consulted the elders and the wise men. People who had conflicts were asked to face each other and explain what happened. They were allowed to bring in their own witnesses, but the one who brought the most witnesses won the case. Other system was practiced when it came to criminal cases. In such cases, the accused were asked to undergo tests. For example, they were asked to put their hands in a pot of boiling water, and the one who got the most blisters was convicted. Another form of test was when the accused were asked to dive under the sea or river, and the one who surfaced first was considered guilty. Ridiculous, isn't it? Okay. Another form of government by the Muslims was introduced in the Philippines. This government was called the Sultanate. The richest and the most powerful member in the Sultanate was chosen as the Sultan. The powers of the Sultan were different from those of the datu. Aside from his political and civil duties, he was also responsible for looking after the religious practices and beliefs of the people within his control. The datus were also under the authority of the Sultan. The Sultan was assisted by the Ruma Bichara in ruling the Sultanate. The Ruma Bichara was a council composed of the influential datus in the Sultanate. All their laws and decisions were based on the Quran, the holy book of the Muslims. Things changed when the Spaniards came to conquer us. The Spanish government established a centralized form of government in our country in place of the existing independent barangays of the early Filipinos. The King of Spain assigned a Governor-General as his representative to our country. The Governor-General was the highest ruler. He had the authority to appoint and remove officials and the power to declare wars. He was the head of the Royal Audiencia, which was the highest court of the land. The Spanish government created Residencia to investigate government officials during their term in the Philippines. A province or an alcaldía, which was under the Spanish control, was ruled by an alcalde mayor. The alcalde mayor had both executive and judicial powers as well as the authority to collect taxes. Later on, the position of alcalde mayor was reduced to a municipal judge. Afterwards, the civil governor became the chief executive of the province. A province is made up of several pueblos or towns. The administrator of a pueblo is called gobernadorcillo or capitan. The Spaniards did not really destroy the barangays. These barangays were grouped together to form pueblos. Each barangay was ruled by a cabeza de barangay who was chosen by the gobernadorcillo.